Welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. Today we have with us the fabulous Natasha Pence. She is a fellow DDPY warrior who we got to hang out with at the Transformation Summit this year, which was awesome.
Was so
And
awesome.
it was so awesome. Yeah, I can't wait until next year when we're all invited back.
I know, I know.
Um, and she wrote the best description about herself that we've received so far. She said, I'm a misplaced hippie soul living, surviving in conservative Southwest Ohio, which I just love your hippie soul. So, welcome, Natasha. Thank you so much for
Thank
being here with
you.
us today.
Thank you.
So, you said that you identify as a pagan. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and maybe some ways that you practice?
Sure. I started as a little person, I went to a kind of, if you know anything about uh, the Midwest, especially in my part of the Midwest, we have a lot of Bible and brimstone style churches. And so I went to one of those to the point where, like, my mom even was like, maybe we shouldn't be going here because I was like having nightmares. Because always, even as like a little
Um,
person, we talked about Armageddon all the time and the Antichrist and all those kind of things. And
Behold the pale horse.
like, and I was like, wow, I kind of think like I think that's what started me thinking about like my spirituality or like myself in the context of the world and like why would things be so scary, you know? Um um but that like in my neck of the woods like is crazy talk. Like, you know, people
Mhm.
go to church every Sunday. They go on Wednesday, they go twice on Sunday, they go on Saturday. Sometimes there's Monday church, like you go to Bible camp, you go to VBS, you go to your sleepaway camps, Bible camp, you know, it's just it's very ingrained. And
And
I
the
just
world's going to end on Tuesday.
and the yes, yes. And we definitely don't
North Carolina was the same.
yeah. So and I think um I kind of went through that and I always my parents were always kind of free thinkers too. And so they were kind of like is this the right for people to be on? Don't you think we should be challenged to think independently? And what isn't that the right way to go? Like, why would a God punish that? So I think I was encouraged from early on, even though I wasn't comfortable to kind of think differently than my peers. And then I think it just kind of started making sense for me, you know, and I was like, well, what do you know is factual? Like you believe, you know, I have a strong belief around, um, you know, Mother Earth and Father Sky, and you know, like the world makes sense to me that way.
Mhm.
So like it's tangible. It feels weird. There there's an energy about it, and energy makes sense to me because it's like it's like I had a really strong science background too, so it was like energy's not lost. It kind of changes, but it's not lost. It doesn't stop.
Mhm.
So I think that just all kind of started making sense. And I started putting it into this kind of weird little pagan life for myself.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's interesting. And I mean, Jonathan, you can definitely speak more because I know you've said, like, growing up, some of the things that you were taught in church were traumatic as well.
Mhm. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
But
you're told like at least I'm 42, so like this was late 80s, mid late 80s, early 90s for me, and that
Mm.
was like the prime time of like Hal Lindsey and the late great Planet Earth and all of this idea that Jesus was real, and you say he was coming back, and it was going to be before the year 1995 for sure. And then after
Mhm.
95, it was like, well, guys, we were wrong. It was before 1997. And it's just
It's
continued like that.
2000.
But
It's
it's just this continued rollover of fear. And it really is just a way to control people. It's a way to make you think the way that they want you to think,
compliant.
so you act the way that they want you to act. And when you're a kid, you know, especially if it's like if your parents are into it too. Like your parents, whether we like to admit it or not as an adult, when you're a kid, your parents are the authority. You
Mhm.
know, like you don't play in traffic because your parents told you it's dangerous, and you go to school because your parents say it's time to go to school, and the world is going to end because the church your parents took you to says the world is going to end, or God's going to get you for being this way or that way, or for living this way or living that way, or wearing pants if you're a woman, depending on your denomination. Like those
Oh, right.
places, those places are still out there. Like there's still people telling people that. Like that's
Oh, for
still a
sure.
thing.
Yeah. I
Daughter,
love
some
that.
of this. I tell my daughter some of this stuff, and she just like looks at me. She's like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
The one story I think, as I was a young college person, that stuck out to me is one of my dear friends from childhood. She got pregnant right after high school, and she had to apologize to the congregation.
Oh my.
Hmm.
Wow.
And I was
Just
like,
so
why would
shame based. Yeah.
I was like, why would you have to apologize for this little person?
Yeah.
It's like that's not an apology, that's a
Right.
celebration.
Right. You created life, and yes, we have to now shame you and make you feel like a terrible person
Yeah,
for what
so
you
like
did.
I just got to the point like where I was kind of all done with that. And like I needed to
Sure.
find my own way that made sense to me
Mm-hmm.
and may not be everybody else's way, but I was trying to combine things that were, science makes sense to me too.
Mm-hmm.
So like how can I combine these things to still have fellowship with others and to still have fellowship with myself and to kind of categorize it in a way that makes sense for me.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, honestly, I feel like that's how spirituality should be. It should
Mhm.
be I'm looking inside of me and finding what resonates with me rather than some doctrine that somebody else told me I have to believe or I'm going to hell if I don't believe this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know. I guess it should just reflect who you are. And if it's, I don't know. But, I also sent my daughter to a private Catholic childcare center because the nun was beautiful. I find faith a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing. And she was very faithful and very like
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, but whole. And like she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't condemning. So, and she ran a bomb childcare program and it was
Yeah.
small and it was a family. So, yeah, and I told her, I'm like, I don't believe like you, sister. I don't. And she was like, that's okay. God made
That's
you that
awesome.
way, and that's beautiful too. And she's like, and we're just gonna love on your kid. How's that? And I was like, sounds good.
Love that. And I grew up in a Catholic church. My parents are both Catholic, and I definitely did not have the same experiences as you two growing up. It was not fire and brimstone. I didn't necessarily always get like what I was hearing in church. It didn't always make sense to me. And I mean, that's kind of the reason I stepped away, is it just didn't resonate with my soul. My soul needed something different. But yeah, I think there's definitely differences, probably regionally and also like denominationally.
Well,
Some people are just, I would categorize her as just a faithful person. And,
Yeah.
and she found beauty in what it was that she was doing and she was giving. And I was like, you know, if all this stuff is true, you're kind of the person they would want. They would,
Right.
you're their salesperson, and that's not a bad thing either, right? And I
Hmm.
was like, as long as you're like living what you're selling or what you're preaching, then I'm good with
Right.
you. It's like this resonates with you. Awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
We don't have to believe the same thing.
Mm-mm.
well, I'm
Not at
not
all.
going to pretend that the Catholic Church doesn't still have some things that they need to answer
Well,
for, because they
yeah,
certainly do.
Oh,
However, one thing I
for
can say
sure.
about them is that they have not been infected with the evangelical movement like the rest of American Christianity basically has, with very few exceptions. And I think that's why you still find some kind and generous people within that faith, as opposed to the majority of mainstream Christianity in America is saying that Jesus's teachings were too soft. Like there's people saying that I mean, there's pastors that are going on media now saying that this is what the parishioners are telling them. That is what that's what's going on in that world. And so, I don't think you do see it as and I'm not going to say I don't have some issues with the Catholic Church, but in that realm, they are doing better than most of American Christianity, from what I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I'm with you there. So you gave us a ton of stories, which was awesome. Um, can you tell us about what happened when you were a teenager?
Is that the one with the car accident?
Yeah.
The car accident is a weird one, right? Like, so I was actually talking to my supervisor about it today, about the accident. So when I was 16, I'd had my license for a couple of months maybe. And um, I was out at a friend's house on probably a Saturday night. I don't remember. It was a weekend night. It was late. I had left to go um, back home for curfew. We were out at a friend's house out in, she lived pretty far out. And I left and I had actually forgotten to wear my seatbelt. And I was like, I got, oh no, maybe a mile down the road. And I was like, oh, better put this on. So I pulled over in a little road and I put it on and then I took off again. Well, out in the country, when they repave the roads here, they just put tar down and loose gravel. It'll figure itself out, right?
Oh my.
And out where I grew up, it was very flat, but like there were these um, strong curves because it was very rural. I mean, cornfields, soybean fields. So it was very windy. And I remember we called it James's Curve. Um, I was going around James's Curve and I wasn't going very fast. And the gravel got up underneath my brakes and I lost the ability to slow down. And when I hit the berm, my tires exploded and flipped my car and slid me through a cornfield
Wow.
on it on the top. But what I remember is I remember knowing I was going to wreck. Like I very vividly, I remember saying, "This, this, this, I'm done. Like this is going to happen." But what I remember very vividly, and I've said before, and I've told my mom, I was like, if I ever heard his voice, I would know exactly who that is. But I remember it felt like arms, right? And I felt like I was being wrapped around, which I was sitting in a car seat. Like, so like, I don't know where that comes from, but it's probably trauma related. But I remember the voice saying, you'll be okay. Let me do it. And I just remember feeling pushed in places and shoved. And I remember being told, you'll be okay. And I was okay. I mean, I flipped my car. I skidded across a cornfield. I had corn stalks that were embedded in the metal of my car. There was like this much, you can't really see it because it's dark here, but there was like this much, there wasn't much space between where my seat was and where the roof of my car ended up. Um, I remember, I would say coming to, I don't know how long I was out. I don't think very long, and realizing like I'm upside down, and that's kind of, and I remember getting out and I mean, I got out on my own. I Um, I walked down the road and I had very minimal injuries. Most of my injuries were from my seatbelt.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
impressive.
And like the trooper, I thought I was being a cool kid. Like when went to high school the next year, um, I was a junior and I was dating a senior, my husband, and I was sitting on the senior side during homecoming, and my trooper came out for the homecoming pep rally, and he had a picture of my car up on the screen, and I was like, "What's that for?" And like they gave me a like the Saved by the Belt award or something like that. I had to come down in front of everybody. They talked about my wreck, and like all this kind of stuff. There's pictures of the in the newspaper. It was crazy, but um, he said it was surprising that I had no injuries. But
Yeah.
the voice I would totally remember. Like I can remember it now, what it sounded like,
Mm-hmm.
and it like to me it was male. I do know that it was deeper and it was gravelly and like it had a very certain it had a tone to it. Like I knew what it was and I was comforted by it.
Yeah.
Would you say that it seemed like it was audible, or do you feel like you were hearing it like in another way? Did it seem like it was like someone in the car with you, even though there was no one
It
physically in the
felt
car?
because of the pressure, because
Hmm.
of the way I felt wrapped and
Hmm.
pushed, it felt like
Mm-hmm.
it was like I could hear it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Wow.
Like, and I don't know. I mean, that all happens really fast, right? And the like
Yeah.
the wreck itself happens fast. It felt really slow,
Mm-hmm.
but I know it happens fast. But like I know what that felt like. I remember feeling pushed and like my head pushed down. I do
Mm-hmm.
remember that. I remember feeling that, and I remember feeling the arms around. Like it felt almost like a bear hug, if that makes sense. Like you were being bear hugged from somebody behind you.
Mm-hmm. I had chills like when you were telling me that story, and I've read it. You sent
Yeah.
it to us, but as you're telling it to me, like I don't know, I just had chills hearing that. And um, do you have any theories about whose voice it was?
Oh, I mean, I thought about it a lot. Um, there's a part of you that wants to say, like, maybe you get a guide or a guardian or
Mm-hmm.
somebody like that that kind of watches over your energy. I thought it was, at one point I thought it was, back in high school, of course, I thought it was like a guardian angel, given my experiences. Um, but I always felt like it was protected.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like, well, maybe you get like as I've gotten older, I was like, well, maybe you get like a guide through your energy or, like energies that maybe have that ability to impact the world around it, or the world that you're in, you know. Um, who it was, I don't know. I thought it was weird that it was male.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a very matriarchal family, so I would have thought that it would have been matriarchal. I remember being distressed by it, that it
Oh,
was a
really?
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, my family is very matriarchal,
Mm-hmm.
so I was surprised that the voice was me. I remember telling my mom, I was like, isn't that weird? Like, why would I feel like, why would that be a thing? Like, why isn't
Yeah.
it a woman? And she was like, Tasha, just let it go.
Yeah.
Just be glad you're not
They
hurt.
saved they
You were
saved your
safe.
life.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
were safe. Like, just let it go. It doesn't matter. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of a bum rap, isn't it? Like, if it's male, like, shouldn't it get a female protector or something like that? And she's like, oh my God, would you just like not?
That is too funny. Yeah.
I remember being very distressed that it was male.
I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely believe that we all have guides, in
Hmm.
varying degrees for different aspects of our lives. I'm somebody that works with guides, through meditation and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I have no doubt in my mind, obviously there's probably no way of telling now like who that was, but it was definitely a protector of yours. It was definitely, you know, some
Think
kind of
so.
guardian. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
how
I
I
like to
think.
think so. And there's a part of me that like especially when I went through more of my skeptical phases, I was like, well, the hugging and the being pushed down was probably the car itself, right? Like and me just like reacting to like pressure that was coming as the car flipped and landed. But it didn't feel that way,
Hmm.
you know. It definitely didn't feel that way. And I can be dramatic. And I felt, I, oddly enough, I felt really calm. Like I knew I was being protected.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the calmness is definitely interesting for sure.
Now,
Um,
afterwards, I was not calm. I do remember that. Afterwards, I was not calm.
Probably
Yeah.
when it sunk in, right? When you're like, oh, this could have been much worse than it is.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I got back to my friend's house, it was like I had some cuts because I had to crawl across the roof of my car, and that's where a lot of glass was. So I had cuts on my knees and my hands, and I had a little bit of from where the windshield shattered. I had some glass in my eye that we just
Ugh.
rinsed out with water. Yeah.
wow. Oof.
Yeah, I was super lucky. I can't explain, like I don't understand how people get that lucky.
Hmm. Well, I mean, to me, it just says that wasn't your time, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember my mom telling me, she was like, it just that was not the agreement you made with the powers that be. That was not part of your agreement. And weird things happen, and that's
That's an
just
interesting way of putting that. Did she have a like you said that your parents are taking you to that kind of fire and brimstone church? Did she end up in a different like faith
well,
afterwards or
the funny thing is about that church is I went with a friend of mine. My parents were not super religious
gotcha?
people, but like I think they wanted me to find my own way. And I don't think that they knew until I started having the nightmares and stuff like that it was something wasn't right.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
That
And so
makes
that's
sense.
when my mom started going with me, and then she pulled me out of that. She was like, we're not doing that anymore. And she had trusted her friend, and thought
Yeah.
it was okay. Yeah. So I think my parents have always kind of had a pretty my dad is a huge, or he was, questioner. I don't even know, like he had a lot of questions all the time about uh, existence and that kind of thing. And I think my mom probably a little bit more quietly so.
Hmm. You said that like you went through a skeptical phase
Mhm.
and started questioning that. Like when did you start questioning that, and why do you think you started questioning that experience?
I think I think when I started having more independent thought of, not independent, but more like your executive function comes online, right? So you start having more adult thoughts and you're able to rationalize things. And I'm like, well, why, why is this a thing? And why is that a thing? And why is that? That doesn't make any sense, or, um, I don't know. And then like well, I mean, if I really think about the skepticism, my grandmother had Huntington's disease. I don't know if you guys know about Huntington's. It's a
Hmm.
rare disorder. My family's free of it if you know about it. Like my
Okay.
mom's
Oh,
side
that's
does not.
great.
She got
Hmm.
tested.
That's good.
Yes, and she's negative. So, but like I saw, like after my grandfather died when I was in college, we had to take my grandmother to try to figure out what was wrong with her. And they kept saying nothing because her blood work was fine. But she had chorea. She had huge behavior issues. I mean, she was a little spitfire of nothing. She like was, I mean, she is a very small person and she could throw those huge planters outside of stores. And I'm like, if you can't figure that out, like if things can't be, I mean, there's got to be other things going on, right? Like we just don't know it all, right?
Hmm.
And so I've kind of felt like that with church and kind of with science. Like I'm like, I just don't think we've got it. Like I don't think we figured it
Hmm.
out.
Yeah, we don't have all the answers yet. And so what does that mean for other experiences?
I think that way with like fairy tales. I mean, people used to think all those things were complete, like, and maybe some of them are true, maybe some of them aren't. Like who are we? And so
Hmm.
I went through this whole phase where I kind of doubted a lot of different things. You
Hmm.
know, like scientifically we can't figure things out. You know, there's some church things that I was involved in or saw, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. So what are what are we doing really? And then I think that progressed as I got older. And I think, I don't know what happens to you at 40, but you hit 40, 45, and it's like, maybe I should just listen to myself and what feels good for me. And I think that that age bracket between 40 and 50, you just start trying to figure shit out. And I think you're brave enough finally to start listening to yourself. So
You're not the first woman I've heard say that before, that it's like once you hit a certain age, it's just like, I don't care as much about other people and their opinions, and I'm just gonna do me, which is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it's a weird space, like because I think I did initially care about stuff like that, and then I'm like, mm. And it's, to some degree too, like the skepticism, like I can it is I got too from like being heavy, like the my weight gain did not make sense, right?
Hmm.
I wasn't having the 2,000 calorie lunches and the eating 4,000 calories a day. So I'm like, if you can't figure this out,
Hmm.
like what else? I don't know. Like, I think it just made me probably more of a doubting Thomas with a lot of things.
Hmm.
And I think then that allows you to be curious and accepting of a lot of other things. You're like, well, maybe that is it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opens your mind to different possibilities and not just thinking there's a clear cut answer for everything.
Mm-hmm. Because it just, I don't know. It just seems like that makes more, it just seems to make more sense.
Yeah.
And like maybe you kind of know. And if you fight knowing, like if you fight listening to yourself, mm, maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe you kind of know already.
Hmm. How does that skepticism look like in your life now?
I have as much of that. Like I think like I think I'm a lot more accepting of a lot of different people's belief systems because like their energy may not be my own and that's okay,
Hmm.
and our but we can still appreciate each other, right?
Yeah.
And so like you want to be God-fearing Christian, okay, does that feel good? Okay, you know,
Hmm.
if want to, have an altar at your home, okay. Does it feel
Right.
good to you? And I think I'm not as much of a skeptic now as I am more of like, well, that's really cool. If it feels good, why not?
Hmm.
And if it speaks to you, is it wrong? There's a
Right.
reason why your energy wants it. So
Right.
honor it and go and honor that energy. For me, it's just like earth and, you know, herbs and flowers and stones and all that kind of stuff. It all holds energy. So it makes sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah. And I agree with you. It's like, does it feel good? And as long as you're not hurting anybody else,
How about it?
who cares? Yeah.
Make you feel stronger? Okay. Does it
Hmm.
give you comfort? Okay. How can those things be bad?
Yeah. I'm with you.
So, yeah, for real, for real.
So you have seen a couple of different apparitions. So tell us about those.
So the one I think that is the strongest for me, I think I wrote it was the Christmas one.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And that was the one where I was I, I live in an old house. Like my house was built in 1885 and a lot of people say like it looks like a haunted house or it does. I'm like, it really isn't. It's very lovely. Like it's full of loveliness is what I would tell people. Like there's nothing scary going on in this house ever. Um, and it was Christmas morning and um Julia had already opened her Christmas presents. We were waiting for his parents to come down. They always come down and make crepes and stuff like that. So we were waiting on them, and I was cooking, doing the finishing touches on, I think, a breakfast casserole or something like that. And um, it just was very clear to me. I saw her out of the corner, not even the corner. I just turned my head and there she was. And I was like, huh, interesting. And I don't know if it was just, I don't know. I don't know what that was about. I don't tell a whole lot of people about that one. It lovely little girl. Um, didn't see her for very long. Was she super like from Victorian? Because it seems like every like apparition's from the
Mm,
Victorian era.
yeah.
I don't know. Like she had blonde hair. She had like a little nightgown on and blonde hair. So I have no idea. I think it was blonde. It could have been another color. It could have, I don't know. Um, but it almost was like they were peeking in to see, and then she was gone. Like it was like she turned around and she was gone.
That's so funny. I grew up in a house where my sister and I also saw her once, but my sister spent her entire childhood seeing this little blonde girl in a nightgown that was a ghost. So that's just funny that, similar description, you know.
Yeah, and she, and it seemed like she smiled, but it was just like she kind of peeked in and looked
Hmm.
and saw, and then she was like, "Cool," and left.
Yeah. Hmm.
And
And never
I just kind of sat there for a minute, like while I was cooking, and I was like, "Oh, nah, no way, no way," because everybody assumes when you live in an old house like this that you've got bumps and I mean, the
hmm
houses creak and they make weird noises. They're
Yeah,
old.
houses
The wood's
settle,
old, huh?
houses settle. That's a real thing. I'm with
And
you.
they make all kinds of weird noises,
Yeah.
and animals make noises, and
Yeah.
Sometimes animals make really, really damn scary noises for sure. Like things you
don't
wouldn't
they?
expect.
Yeah.
Some of the things that animals can do don't sound like animal noises that you would think for sure.
No, no. But I think that's the main one that I can think of where I was just like, that's different.
hmm
And I wasn't scared. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
scary. It was just like, huh,
Huh.
It's a pretty good
okay,
response. Well, that happened.
happened. And I John and I, my husband and I have talked about it, and he's like, do you think that it's just like, because we celebrate solstice, we celebrate Christmas, we have a lot of different things that go on. And he's like, do you think that the energy was just so high that they maybe she was curious, or maybe it allowed it to be seen, or maybe they're always here and it was just the energy was so high because she was little, and Santa had just been here and all those kind of things. And I was like, I could be. I mean, I don't make sense if you think about that, energy coming and going, maybe,
hmm
so um that's really the one that I remember most clearly.
hmm
I don't
Yeah.
think we've had a lot. I mean, they're
I,
weird.
I think some people would say that one experience is a lot. I mean, that's just context, really. I mean, not everyone
Hmm.
is haunted throughout their entire lives like some of us are. Like, that does seem like that there are people who, you know, have never seen or experienced anything that's off the wall. But I think a lot of people who have never tell anybody. You know,
I don't tell a lot of people mine. I think, the thing around the car accident, I think sounds like craziness. And um, I don't know that I tell a whole lot of people that story.
hmm
Um, the little girl, I haven't really told a whole lot of people that either. I think John and I talked about it, and he's had a little weird experience here too, but it was sounds. Like it was a sound. And he was like, can I explain it? Well, something could maybe, but like I don't know what that was. It was just weird.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's understandable. I don't think that we're required to be able to explain everything. Like, and that's another thing that kind of goes into like the whole skepticism thing for me is like, well, maybe sometimes things just kind of happen to you. You know, there doesn't have to
Hmm.
be this grand scheme of like, you know, an otherworldly or conspiracy or anything like that. Sometimes we just experience things that science can't measure yet.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's not that many years ago that, you know, something smaller than the atom was a theory, right? Like,
hey, like I'm like, I don't know what that is, and I think that's okay. And maybe that makes you more open to allowing those moments and not, and just not tossing them away and just allowing yourself to be curious for a moment and say, like, I want to remember that because maybe at some point we'll understand it better, you know?
Hmm.
And whatever that is, I mean, I'm open to pushback. And I think you bring up a important point, like skepticism isn't always about denial.
no, it's just for me, it's saying I I don't know. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm kind of
I'm
there too. I don't know. What is it?
Right.
But I'm open to it being a lot of things. And, could it have been my brain saying like frazzled because it was Christmas morning? Maybe, but no. I know what you see sometimes, and maybe that's why like to you like to your point, like when some people don't ever see anything, and then some people see more. Um, is it frequent? For me, I would say no. Like, I mean, this is spans of decades, right? Like decades and decades. Like, and they're just little blurbs, little,
Hmm.
I don't know. It's a weird space.
It is a weird space, but it's interesting and it's fun to kind of play around with the ideas of what these things could be and just like you said, being open and curious about it all.
I mean, I sure hope that there's other things and that energy moves around and does
Hmm.
other things and guides and blesses and, and instructs and isn't lost. I mean, that feels really good. Like, do
Yeah.
I know what happens with it? No.
Nope.
But like, it sure does feel better thinking like energy continues and you
for
find
sure.
Hmm.
your energy people, you find, because to me, that's like why, how like you meet those friends that you've known forever,
Hmm.
your energies know each other, like maybe.
I don't want to speak for Jonathan, but I think he and I both felt that way when we met each other.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, there's got to be something to that, right?
Hmm.
Those kind of moments where you're just like, oh, huh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because my husband was not in my plans. I met him when I was 16. That's craziness. Craziness. I had all kinds of other plans, and it was
Uh-huh.
not that.
Nope.
It was not that.
Nope. The universe had other ideas for
I
you.
know. I was like, no. And my parents met in like eighth grade. So I was like dead set against doing anything like that. Like, not me. No way. No way. Mm-mm.
Yep.
Like, I'd even picked a profession that I thought I would allow me to be a nomad. Like, I wanted to go, like, I'm going to teach here for a couple years. I'm going to go teach here a couple years. I'm going to teach here. I'm going to kiss all the boys, across the country. And I didn't do any of
Nope.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny.
You just
Yeah,
kind of
moving to Virginia was not in my plans at all.
fully. I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's warmer here though.
It is warmer. And I have not shared this story on the podcast, but um a couple months before Jonathan and I started talking, I was coming home from Myrtle Beach with my parents. We had just gone on vacation. And I had said to my mom, like, I don't know if I'm gonna live in New York for the rest of my life. And she's like, what? Like she's like, well, where would you go? And I'm like, I don't know. Virginia seems really nice. And then 2 months later, he and I started talking.
Yes. Isn't that cool though?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and
That's
I don't even know why Virginia popped in my head. Like I had spent a little bit of time here one summer, when I was in college, but like that was it. You know what I mean? It was just like Virginia seems nice.
a really interesting thing. Like I
Mhm.
wonder, like that's another thing that can just like make you curious. Like, was that your, like, huh,
Mhm.
maybe I
Yeah.
know where that energy is. Like maybe,
Mhm.
maybe I kind of know something and maybe I
Yeah.
need to listen. What
Yeah.
did you know that he was from Virginia?
No, I didn't even know of him at that time.
No,
Like,
that was
I mean,
I
like,
before
got
we
you.
had any contact
I
whatsoever.
mean, like we were in the Positively Unstoppable challenge together. I don't know that we were even Facebook friends at that time.
No,
Like it
I don't
was,
think we had interacted at all at that point.
yeah, it was like
Because like
two
one of the
months
first
later we
things you
started
told me
talking.
about were the stories of that trip that you had recently to South Carolina, and we kind of laughed about that together when we first started talking to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Uh-huh. Yep.
That's hysterical. That's such a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
I wonder somewhere if you just kind of knew.
I mean, I think so. Like, I mean, again, it just like came out of my mouth and I'm like, and I did kind of have that moment of like, I don't know where that came from, but it feels like, it felt right saying it in that moment.
That's really interesting. That's super
Yeah.
cool. What a
Yeah.
great story. What a great
So
story.
I know that you had said like your dad has passed.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and tell us about what's happened since he's passed with you and with your family members.
Sure. So, my my family has a very strong belief that my dad's family does that it's and I don't know where this belief comes from, but they really feel strongly that you should be mindful when you dream of the person that has passed, and they call it a visit. And like so, you're and they like to share when you've been visited by that person, and um, it was interesting because like I had a weird relationship with my dad, but like I was his POA. I helped him a lot with his health. Um, my grandmother, when she was still alive, would call me and say, like, you need to go tell your dad this because you are the only person he listens to.
Hmm.
And that is true very much. But what was interesting is like when we talked about being visited by dad, they all assumed that I would be like the first person visited by him, like I'd get the dream first. And that was not the case. And I was a little offended for a little bit because I was like, damn it, you know. But my one aunt, he was very close to her. I think she had one of the first ones. And she's like, well, I got visited by Neil. And I was like, really? How was it? And she was like, he was just very very at peace. It was great. And she didn't say a whole lot more about it. So she just let me know that she'd had it. And um, I was like, oh, interesting. And so a couple other people had their visits. And I remember when I got mine and I had this dream and he looked so at peace. He looked healthier, but not like perfect. Like he wasn't his high school self. He was um but what was interesting when we talked about what he looked like, it was all very similar. It was white hair, and he was um, usually smiling, and he would just make off the wall comments, like, and then some people said, like, he didn't really say anything. He just kind of laughed and walked away. And we're like, well, that's kind of dad too. He was
Mhm.
a little bit of an oddball, but we thought it was interesting that he just kind of that he looked similar, but not like when he passed and not like a young man. He looked like, a middle-aged, like little longer and, like 50 toward his 60s, late 50s. Um, and he had a very similar appearance in all of them. Like you
Hmm.
would think it would be all over the place,
Yeah.
and that's what, like, I thought my aunts would see him as like a high schooler or in his 20s or something like
Mhm.
that. And they did not. It was all about the same time bracket for him.
That is interesting. Did it
for sure.
feel like a normal dream?
Interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I remember not being a like I remember not being afraid of it. I remember I don't know that I could answer that if it felt like a regular one. I just remember thinking, finally,
Mm,
finally I got my visit. And
hmm.
it was reassuring, you know, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know if it felt like a different dream or not. It just kind of felt like a regular dream, like a regular dream. Like, but it felt like I knew he was there.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So
Have you had any other like visits from family members who have passed on?
yeah. I I don't know if it's a I don't know what your brain does during grief. I don't I don't know. But like I know I was very close to my grandfather, my mom's dad. Um and he passed away very suddenly. You know, I was at college and I'd seen him on a Friday night at football and then like he had a massive heart attack. And I remember I was very I was very traumatized by that because you know, he was alive for a few days. And we thought he was getting better. So like I had reassured myself and that was like a no-go. And I remember going back down to college and I went to UC and it's kind of hilly there. And I was going up one of the hills and I saw this man who kind of like looked like build wise looked like my grandfather. And I was like kind of driving up and I was like getting ready to go to work. And he turned around and to me he looked like him, but it could have just been an older man. And he tipped his hat and he waved. And then he turned and then he kept going. And again, it was like one of those things where it's like that felt good,
Hmm.
you know. And I don't know what I mean. It was weird that somebody in Clifton and near UC would actually turn around and wave to people. Like we don't do that here in the
Yeah,
city.
we're not that friendly.
We're not that friendly in the city, not in the city proper. You know, you're more likely to get flipped off, you
Uh-huh.
know, than anything else. But it was kind of a weird thing.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It was just kind of it was reassuring more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think that dreams are always interesting to me. Dreams that don't feel like dreams, dreams that don't make sense as dreams that you can kind of bring into something else. It's always super interesting for me. And so like it's multiple people in your family that have experienced that with this, right? Like
Hmm.
this is not just you. It's very similar experiences. Is it a similar time frame? Is it like what's the time span on that?
Um, I think it was like the first year after he died. So that first year is when um people at least they share it more often. Um
Yeah.
during that first year. I don't know if that's like a grief response. I don't know. Um I can do you want to hear a really weird story?
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's
Of
what we're
course
here
we
Okay,
do.
for.
this is super weird. This is super weird. It's not my well, it's only in my story that I provided the avenue for it, but it's really my uncle's story. So, my dad and my uncle, do you remember that there was that fish that was on the plaque that sang like this crazy song? Do you
Uh-huh.
remember that?
Billy
Yeah.
Bass.
There it is. So my uncle got my dad one of those. Um, and it became this joke between the two of them. Every Christmas, they would wrap it up and send it to the other one. And it was like they made it this big ordeal every Christmas,
Uh-huh.
family Christmas, and they would rewrap it for years, years. I mean, it was hysterical and old by the time they stopped doing it.
Uh-huh.
And the night my dad died, I had 2 hours with my dad before he passed away, and he was completely coherent. Um, and I remember him telling me, he was like, so um, I just want to let you know that I have a hillbilly will, and yeah, hillbilly will, at my spot, and you'll know what to do with all the stuff when you go there. And I was like, and my dad was a hospice nurse, so I really think he knew something was up. Like,
Yeah.
I think he knew. I don't think he told me, but I think he knew something was up. And I was like, a hillbilly will. And he was like, yep, you'll find it. It's in one of these little notebooks. You'll find it and just do what it says. I know you'll do that. And I was like, all right. And so we get to his spot, and there's all these notebooks, and it took us forever to find his hillbilly will. But the fish was there at his spot. And so
Oh.
at my dad's service, we played Christmas music and wrapped it up and gave it to my uncle as part.
Wow.
Yeah. And my uncle put it in his garage once he got it. Here's the really weird part is it doesn't have batteries, but occasionally it still plays.
Wow.
And they go out and they talk to him when it happens.
Uh-huh.
That's wild.
That is wild. I
Like
love that.
yeah. So that's like, it's super funny and it's super cute. And they like my aunt has been trying to call me like while it's singing.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm not home or something. She's
Yeah.
like, I want you to hear this. And she's like, and then we go out and we talk to your dad. She goes, I know that's obscene or not. She goes, I know that's crazy, but it just seems the right thing to do. And I was like, you do you, like, you know.
Yeah.
She's like, I was like, does it have that? She goes, no, we've taken the batteries out. We've tried to clear the things, but that's a really weird one. It's not my story, but it's pretty funny and it's pretty amazing at the same time, you know.
I
Yeah.
love it. And I mean, going and talking to him does feel like the right thing to do, you know? Like he's saying hi. He wants you guys to know that he's there, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And it
So,
makes sense to some degree because my dad was very energy driven as well. Like,
uh-huh.
you know, he's a little odd sometimes, but like he was really believed in energy and light and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that he would, if he's able to do so, I would think he would use those avenues to communicate if he can, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's my uncle gets a tickle out of it. Like he'll tell me, he's like, well, it's been about 3 months and I haven't heard anything from your dad yet. So
That's a trip.
I love it.
yeah,
That's
that's
great.
super fun. They said like sometimes it freaks them out because like they know it doesn't have anything in
Yeah.
it. They're like, why does it keep playing? You know, so I'm like, I don't know, maybe. And so like they just go out and talk to him when it happens.
Mm-hmm. I
For
love
funny.
that. It
Yeah,
is
I
funny.
do too. I do too. I love that it's this fish.
Yeah. And it's so significant to their relationship and your family history, you know, so it just seems so perfect that that's
Yeah.
one of his ways of communicating.
Yeah. It's pretty priceless. And my uncle is so thrilled when he gets to share those stories with us. He's like, well, I went out and I told your dad about blah 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 when he got the fish going because I don't know what to because I don't want to hear that thing all the time, but I can't get rid of it. Like it's gonna have to stay in the family forever now. You
Yeah.
know?
Keep passing it down.
So there's this weird little plastic fish on a plaque, you know.
For sure.
That sings
Crazy.
sometimes without batteries.
It's without batteries and nobody knows why.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah. That's my
So-
weird little tales.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks for
good.
sharing them with us. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This has been
You
very
have great
enjoyable.
tales. Yes, it has
Very
definitely
fun.
been. I'm really glad we got to have you come on.
Oh yeah, today was kind of crazy. I was hoping it was not going to time out. So I'm glad it did. You guys
Yeah.
are fun to talk to.
You are so much fun to talk to too.
All right.
All right.
Take care,
Take
guys.
care.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.